There we are. We're back. We're black. We are here. We are Blerds in the Attic. I am Cheo Hodari Coker, the former showrunner of Marvel's Luke Cage, co-writer of Notorious, all-around hip-hop raconteur, and, I write some films and TV shows here and there. I'm here with my man.
David Betancourt, former Washington Post comic book culture reporter, author of The Avengers Assemble, writer of multiple Miles Morales Spider-Man adventures, and hopefully some really cool stuff in the future.
Also have to add that he's also deeply influenced by John Witherspoon when it comes to the movie Boomerang, because he's coordinating today.
Because
He's
you
got
got
the
Nate.
Yes, you got the Roberto Clemente hat. You've got Batman. He is a lover of all things DC. I'm really holding Marvel down. But despite all that, despite Hawaii to DC, our back and forth, we are united on a lot of things. I don't know. Well, first thing is, it's cold where you are.
Yeah, man. So we have the heat, and we aren't just Blerds in the Attic. We are heaters in the attic. So this has been the first week that I've had to actually turn on the heat. Because the central air in the house doesn't come up to here. So got the little window unit right next to me. So it kind of gives the flags a nice little flappy effect. I'm not doing that telekinetically in case you're wondering. But yeah, it's cold here, man. And these reports, like there's some serious cold weather coming. We actually got a break today. Thanksgiving, or as we all know now, the proper pronunciation, Thanksgiving. That was cold. That was some of the first real serious cold weather, especially here in DC. It's about to get colder, but I am happy to report we will be able to continue to at least 50% of the podcast being in an attic. So we're like, Blerds in the Attic, Blerds on the Island, because Cheo's over in Hawaii. But yeah, the heat is on in here, man. But it's working, thank goodness.
Yeah, well, see, I do have to do a live remote one of these days, and I need to go out to the beach and do one of these here. But
And speaking of
it's a
the
little.
coordinating, I got to give a shout out to the wife, because I got this shirt. First of all, I love this shirt. This is the newest Batman logo for the new Batman comic book series at DC Comics, written by Matt Fraction and illustrated by the incredible Jorge Jimenez, one of the best artists on the planet right now. But this is the new logo. I saw this shirt at New York Comic Con. This is where I got it. And at the DC booth, instantly had to get it. I'm like, yo, this shirt is incredible. I kind of like the yellow, kind of has like a Robin the Boy Wonder vibe to it. I'm like, all right, I'm getting this shirt. So, as I'm sure you know, Cheo, you've been to a few cons. Everything at the cons are overpriced. So I paid about $40 for this shirt. But I'm like, you know
Oh
what?
hell no! Oh wait, we got wait. I like the shirt. No, that is not a $40 shirt,
It's
man. I'm
not.
sorry.
It's not. But hear me out. I get home, and Gila's favorite color is yellow, or amarillo, as she calls it. And she's like, "Oh, I really like that shirt." I could already sense her, like, that thing the ladies do with like whatever's yours is theirs. I could like sense her wanting to take over the shirt symbiotically and make it hers. So let me look for you one online. Go online. That bad boy was like $26. So I was instantly furious that I fell for the Comic Con up pricing and didn't just be like a smart consumer like I normally am with everything
Yeah,
else, whether it's action figures or baseball caps or whatever. So Gila has the same shirt and she paid a lot less for it, which she gets a kick out of.
yeah. No, I mean, because you paid $40
But that
for
was my first
probably.
New York. That was my first New York Comic Con. Now I
Okay,
know.
to that. So you paid $40 for a $26 T-shirt that was probably made for $2, and probably anywhere else, and probably in 5 months it's gonna sell for 12.
Hey man, it was my first New York Comic Con. I was excited. The shirt was cool. Jorge Jimenez, the artist, was literally right there. It was almost like he was saying, "You must buy, compra la camisa, David, compralo."
Yeah, but,
Um,
but then how come he didn't hook you up?
yeah. Well, he did autograph my. They were handing out posters of his very cool first cover to Batman #1, which came out a few months ago, and he autographed that for me. I've actually got that framed here in the attic. It's a pretty big poster too.
Oh, that's dope.
So I got something out of it. So if there's any way I made up for the overpriced shirt, it was the very cool Jorge Jimenez autographed art that I have in here now.
That's dope. That's dope. I mean, at some point we have to get Blerd's T-shirts made, and hopefully by the time there's an actual, another con. Because is WonderCon there's one that's in Baltimore, right? Which one's that one?
There's a Baltimore Comic Con was recently. Baltimore Comic Con was actually right after New York Comic Con, and I was
Okay.
invited to it and wanted to go, but New York Comic Con wore me out, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to do both. I'm hoping I can do both next year. They also have an awesome con that floats around, but of late has been taking place in the spring here in DC. So there are cons everywhere, man. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of those we definitely have to do like a live cast and actually, you know, do
I
that
would love
there.
to do that at Awesome Con. I'm gonna see if I can holler at the folks there and
Yeah.
get you back here to DC.
Yeah. No, that would be dope. That would be dope. Here, what? It's a little cooler today. It was only 78 degrees.
Now I do see you're rocking the Fighting Rainbows
Yeah.
University of Hawaii. Now, have you always had that, or is that the I live in Hawaii now, so I got to flex? Like, was this already in the wardrobe? What's going on here?
Well, no, I mean, Hawaii, now here, my wife working for the chair of pediatrics for the Johnny Burns School of Medicine. So, of course, which is also affiliated with University of Hawaii. So, got to rock that. But at the same time, I mean, the Hawaii vibe is just the Hawaii vibe, and it's not really as stringent as like say for when we're in Seattle, where like you could basically wear any NFL gear that you wanted as long as it was Seahawks.
Yeah,
And that like literally on Sundays you walk around Seattle, everybody was either has the number 12 or is wearing like a variation of Dago green and blue,
right. 'Cause they do the
everywhere you
12th
go.
man there. That's a big thing in Seattle,
Yeah.
right? The 12th man.
Whereas Hawaii is interesting because, well, first off, I never want to rag on Hawaii because I love it here. But the only beef I have with Hawaii, we've talked about this, is football for breakfast, man. Because of the time change, like games come on, without because we don't have daylight savings time. So when there's daylight savings time, the first round of games come on at 7 o'clock. They gave us a break now. Now the games come on at 8 o'clock. But 8 o'clock in the morning, you're just not in the mood to watch football.
Yeah,
As,
yeah.
as much as I love football or any sport, what happens? A perfect example is like my Giants right now. I mean, they're my Giants because any team that Jameis Winston plays for is my team. Um, Even though he got benched, right? He's back on the bench because Jackson Dart is back. So don't
Bo.
spoil the price. I mean the score right now because I haven't watched it. Because right now Monday Night Football is on, but
Yep, we're filming
uh,
on Monday.
it is 4:43 here. It doesn't even
That's
occur to
wild.
me to watch the game until like 5 or like when it comes on. By the time I actually naturally occurs to me to watch the game, that's based on West Coast time. The game is either fourth quarter or long over.
And this is coming from someone who has spent a lot of time living on the West Coast. So you were already kind of used to games not starting at 1 p.m. anyway because
Yeah,
you were out west. But that just shows you the drastic time difference from, being out west. In your case, you were in Washington State, spending some time in California. Now you're on the islands of Hawaii. That's wild to me. My parents live in Arizona. My father is a Washingtonian, huge Commanders fan. And so, you know, when the games start here at 1 p.m., it's depending if it's daylight savings or not, it can be either 3 hours back or 2 hours back. Um, but that is watching football for me as someone who has lived on the East Coast their whole life is a 1 p.m. thing. Like it starts at 1 p.m. in the
yeah,
afternoon. I could not. I don't know how well I would adjust to because honestly, all these games they keep having in Europe, minus when the Commanders were out there playing against the Dolphins. Like half the time I forget they're on. I'm like, because at 9 o'clock in the morning, your brain isn't thinking. Put the football game on.
yeah.
No,
Well,
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 if it's Premier League
that
football,
nine
yeah.
o'clock in the morning for you is what? That nine? That's a 3 a.m. game in Hawaii. But okay. But then again, the trade off is eternal sunshine.
Yeah, I
Walked,
don't.
walked along the beach yesterday
In
for
no
for
in no, in no way, shape, or form
white
did I say
sand.
I do not feel bad for you at all.
No,
You
no, no. I mean, I know this is the world's smallest violin playing for me watching 7 a.m. football or 8 a.m. football, but so be it. But no, I mean, I'm gonna have to catch up with the game after.
nice gear though. I like the Hawaii gear. I like that.
Yeah, no. We actually, my daughter was out here for Thanksgiving, so we went to go see a volleyball game, and well, you know, we I think we were playing Long Beach State. Well, we lost the game, but it was a great atmosphere for volleyball, and of course, seeing this, I had to have it, and
Did I ever tell you the time? This is when my middle daughter was a baby. Matter of fact, I think might have been my middle daughter's first trip to the Dominican Republic, which she made when she was 6 months old. But on the plane ride over there, we were on the plane. No, this was leaving DR because we had a flight to San Juan, Puerto Rico, and then from Puerto Rico we went back home. And on the flight was the Dominican volleyball team.
oh wow,
And brother, let me tell you, I don't know if you've seen that Jordan Peele meme where he's sweating like profusely, but that was your boy. And I grabbed my oldest daughter because they were getting on the same plane as us. And unfortunately, I don't have back. This is back when digital cameras. I know they're kind of retro right now, but this is back when it was normal to have a digital camera if you were traveling. And I kind of shoved the oldest, who was like 9, I think at the time. I was like, "Yo, go tell them you want a picture, just so we could interact." John, I was the shortest one there, man. I'm 6 feet tall, and all those girls could have posted me up easily and hit a fade shot on me. But that was my craziest volleyball experience, is being on the plane with the national. I think they were going to Puerto Rico as well, probably to play against a team there. But wild memory.
yeah, yeah. No, what else is going on? Well, we have a lot of movie stuff to talk about.
A lot going on. We
It's just kind of a weird time in movies. You know what I'm saying? Like everything is upside down because no one can really constitute what makes a movie star anymore. I mean, unless you happen to be Tom Cruise, Denzel Washington, Michael B. Jordan, and a very select few people whose you know box office just works. Everybody else is just touch and go. Even it's funny because One Battle After Another, which had I think one of the worst marketing campaigns. Leo, of course, in the great performance helps that one open, where it's just like banner year ultimately at the box office for Warner Brothers. But number one movie in the country this weekend was Zootopia. And the thing about that is Zootopia, the first Zootopia was a great movie. And honestly, I think the reason that it worked because this is actually a sequel that people wanted to see, that they
Mhm.
were clamoring for. So it's not about the Zootopia 2s. It's not about even something like Fire and Ash because the Avatar movies have, James Cameron backs it up. You know what I'm saying? It's like that when you go to the cinema, you're going to have a cinematic experience,
Yeah,
not just
this is the calm
not
before.
not a television experience blown up cinematically. Like you are gonna experience pure cinema. But the thing is that a lot of things that you would think work just don't work. And so I don't know. Like, some people want to say box office is broken, the system's broken. AI is coming. Kids don't really care about movies because they watch everything on their phone. Even television now is being affected by the fact that you have these. I don't even know what they call it verticals. The fact that they're now making these dramas for your phone
Oh yeah,
that aren't.
that,
Yeah,
that that's a real thing. That's a real
yeah,
thing. And I don't know. I think one, this is the calm before the storm because you know 2025 is going to end with another Avatar movie, and there's never been an Avatar. Movies are funny to me because I'm not the biggest Avatar fan. I will see it eventually, but I'm not the type of person where like I have to go see that as soon as it comes out. But they don't need me. The Avatar has a built-in base. Those movies are immensely expensive, and those are literally movies that need to make $1 billion to justify their existence, and they always do make $1 billion. So there's about to be a little bump. We all know that because it's a James Cameron Avatar movie, and it'll make a lot of cash. And then it's going to be kind of like the wait until we get into 2026, which at some point this year, we're going to see the trailers for both Avengers Doomsday, which is the return of Robert Downey Jr., and Supergirl. And to go back to Avatar a little bit, that will likely B, where we see the first trailers for the Odyssey. So it's like there's still,
Mhm.
are the kids watching movies? No. Are they on their phones too much? Yes. Are these verticals existing? Yes. But people like you and I are still here. There's still plenty of moviegoers around, and I don't think theaters are in trouble. But it's just like the same thing we've been saying. Oh, Marvel Studios is having all these problems. Is there's too much? There's just an abundance. There's too much content. It's just a matter of making something good. Make good stuff, and people will go out and see it.
Yeah, I think it's made good stuff. I think it's basically understanding how to use both screens to your advantage. I mean, because on one hand, it's like everything eventually comes home. So, and people nowadays, because every President's Day, every Super Bowl, it gets cheaper and cheaper to get big screens. You know what I'm saying? It's like there are 90 and 100 inch screens that are being sold for what I bought my 65, my top of the line 65-inch screen for almost a decade ago.
It's
You
insane
know?
how little, which always happens. I mean,
Yeah.
you and I have a little gray in our beards, and we can remember when VCRs were very expensive.
Well,
I remember that being like I still to this day, because the obviously my background, my parents were teens when they had me, so I remember being 5, 6, and my dad getting our first VCR, and that meant we could go to Errol's. Really aging myself there, talking about Errol's to rent, video cassettes. And I'm watching Teen Wolf and all that stuff.
mhm.
But I remember back then in the '80s, VCRs costing like what $500, $600. So
Oh, yeah, even more than that, because the thing was the ability to record a program
right.
off of television was like huge, and like
Oh, my
you know,
grandparents were gangsters with that, man. They were video recording The Young and the Restless
yeah.
every day because they
Well,
had
I
to
mean,
work.
well, that's the thing. Like our kids don't remember days that shows came on and times the show came on because you had, if you want to watch ER, you knew that was going to be Thursday at 10 o'clock. If you want to watch Cosby Show, you knew that was going to be also Thursday at 8:30. Like Dukes of Hazard was an 8 o'clock Friday show. Dallas was at 9. Knots Landing was at 10, and then you could flip the channel over to NBC for Miami Vice. Miami Vice, like Friday nights on NBC were like Mistress of Science, Manimal, Miami Vice, like Miami Vice Friday night videos. Like there's like a whole era of times when you would remember what you wanted to watch and when it would come on, and it was a thing. Nowadays, it's like, okay, I want to watch this, and then all episodes are available. I
Yeah,
want to watch that, all episodes are available. You don't even have to be home because you have it in your pocket,
but
or you can watch on a computer. On your computer, it's everywhere. I mean, video games are so good nowadays. It's like, I mean, I was perfectly entertained with my playing Atari back in the day. That's how
yeah,
old I am. You know what I'm saying? And now it's like I was playing Madden, and it looked like literally, if I blinked, it looked like I was watching a live game.
yeah.
I mean, it's starting to affect things to the point where now, even when you're watching live games, the on-screen graphics and how they show the offense and the defense, and it's basically a live video game experience.
But
Um,
that's where, as you were talking about the newfound affordability of really large screens comes into play. I mean, I'm a big Bravia guy. I'm
mhm.
very fortunate. I've got a 55 in here in the attic. I've got a 75 downstairs, and at our spot in Santo Domingo, which we still haven't set up yet, I sent the 85 over there. So like those are like miniature movie screens, and
Yo, but you should have just told people that in the crib that you're not in, you have an 85-inch screen. If someone's gonna break in, someone's gonna break in, and you're set, man.
My brother-in-law Julio's the security guard over there. He'll be all right.
All right, cool.
It'll be fine.
Julio's
Uh,
holding it down.
no, he absolutely is. Probably just because he wants to utilize the TV himself. Um, but you're right. There's there's less incentive when you've got, and take me for example. As I told you last week on our last pod, I finally watched F1. F1, by the way, Hans Zimmer's score still has a hold on me. It's all I've been listening to since I watched the movie. But did I regret not seeing it because it was so good? Did I regret not seeing it on IMAX? Yes, absolutely. But was it cool watching it in 4K on a 75-inch Sony Bravia screen? Hell yeah, it was. It was awesome. And that, you have to kind of throw that into consideration as to the current theatrical dilemma is a lot of people have really dope screens and they're just like, you know what, I'll watch it in 4K when I can at home.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Okay, the windows are collapsing. Now it's not even safe to buy movies when they come out because 3 weeks later they're streaming. Like I was gonna buy Eddington, and I said, you know what? Let me wait for half a second. Now it's streaming. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Because I'm already paying all this money to all these streaming services. You really do see the difference when you have, you know, a large 4K television. The formats are getting to the point now where it's like, you might as well wait till the President's Day sale to get the big screen TV and actually also invest in an HD, DVD player because movies just look so good at home. They are rivaling to a certain extent the cinematic experience, unless you're watching a movie that is truly deserving of that title. Like the F1s, the Sinners of the world, the One Battle After Another. You see those movies in movie theaters and you really do feel the difference and it enhances the experience that you're having at home because you've seen it on the biggest possible screen and now it's giving you another bite at the apple visually to watch it and you're experiencing it that. But some people never get past going home because with the amount of money it costs to go out to see a movie, you're already out of pocket, a couple $100 between parking, concessions, depending on how old, if you have kids, depending on how old, young or old your kids are. Okay, if you go to the movie on a date without getting dinner, you're still going to be out of money. If you go and have a date and have dinner on top of the movie, and the movie might not even be that good, either way, it's like it just feels less of a risk to take a risk on spending 14 to $20 buying the movie or renting it for less than it is to actually go out. And so I think that's one of the things. And large screen format. I mean, having such high quality, relatively comparatively inexpensive large screen options at home is one of the things that's killing cinema. And so that's why I think that there's so much fear about this potential merger of Netflix and
and one of
possibly purchasing Warner Brothers. And although, admittedly, I love watching movies on Netflix. I think of any of the streaming services, they have the best presentation. And there's something about Netflix. Even watching movies you've seen 20 times before, when it shows up on Netflix, you're excited to watch it again on Netflix. I don't know what
yeah,
it is, but there's something about it. But I think that there's this kind of disconnect between the movies that they make, and they spend hundreds of millions of dollars making their movies,
because they
but
can.
then the lack of a theatrical release or proper theatrical release is one of the things that I know is starting to peeve filmmakers because Guillermo del Toro makes a beautiful movie in Frankenstein that even though yes it's overlong and they paid the money and it's all good, I really would like to see that movie, with popcorn, at the cinema.
I'll give
And
Netflix
that,
credit. Netflix is one of the few streamers that you can actually pay a little bit extra so that if you have a 4K TV, you can watch their content in 4K.
yeah, no doubt.
That's pretty groundbreaking, and that's something I utilize because why not if you have the 4K TV? But you're absolutely right in terms of I think it's very scary to me to think about Netflix potentially buying Warner Brothers because they've been very vocal about the fact that they are kind of when it comes to the theatrical experience. They are a streaming company first. They always have been. They always will be. They spend hundreds of millions on movies because they can, because those always coming in because everybody has Netflix,
Mhm.
and that's dicey. Of all the landing places of Warner Brothers, and a lot of them are kind of scary when you think about it. I hope they don't end up in Netflix. And
Yeah.
I love Netflix. I pay for Netflix. I want
Well,
the content. I just don't want the DC universe there.
well, I mean, for me, I don't know. It's like I guess because working in film and TV, and just being just a huge fan of the Warner Brothers actual physical studio. The studio, the bungalows, just Warner Brothers itself. I selfishly also has the best commissary. I selfishly want that to survive. I worry about the Warner Brothers studio surviving if Paramount gets it. Um, the infrastructure wise, Netflix. I mean, yes, hopefully they would see the the benefit of having the actual physical studio to make movies with Warner Brothers. You know, I think the one I think that makes the most sense, honestly, just geographically, would be if Universal buys it because they're neighbors. The Universal lot, the Warner's lot merge to a certain extent, gives you more places to film. Hopefully, people start filming in LA again. Um, that's one thing. You know, I've also hoped, although it doesn't look like it's going to happen. I mean, you would think one of the natural suitors would be Apple because it would give Apple immediate credibility. They've got the cash. They don't have to leverage anything, loan anything. They're over $1 trillion.
They've got the
Over the
cash,
top.
and they respect the theatrical experience, and
Yeah,
they proved that with F1, and that you still like F1 is not going to be streaming until December 12th. When we're still a couple of weeks away.
right.
I don't think Apple will buy Warner Brothers, but as as I said, with all the other options, that would kind of be my preference in terms of where they ended up. And Apple, like just like you say with Netflix, Apple, like there's a huge difference when you're watching Netflix or Apple TV Plus and all the other streamers. You can like feel just like how much money they have because it just the way it's presented and the way it comes off the Christmas, everything is just a lot better.
Yeah, no, and Apple TV, like for those people that are enthusiasts of Apple television shows, they're really kind of amongst those people that really care about that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
They're kind of neck and neck in terms of quality, in terms of how they're regarded by people that love quality television. Apple shows are starting to get to that Netflix level of excitement, and I think it's partially because of the fact that Netflix is so famous now for the one and two and done,
yeah,
and so I think it's harder for people to kind of invest. One of the things that's really interesting right now, I think we were talking about before we got on, was the fact that Rian Johnson. Um, did you read somewhere that he wanted more advertising, or that he felt that this latest Knives Out wasn't being pubbed a
I
little
saw
more?
I saw that somewhere where I think he just felt like there wasn't enough emphasis on the fact that there's you can see it theatrically alongside it streaming once the debut happens. Um,
Oh, well, that whether he said it or not, it's 100% true because you know I was expecting to see the movie on Netflix, turned it on, and said, "Oh, well, it's not available until December 12th on Netflix," and which of course is a great day for me because that's my birthday. But the thing is that knowing that it's out in theaters makes me want to go see it in theaters. But a lot of people, they'll just say, you know what, because of just how life gangs up on you,
and
they're just gonna wait. You
I
know,
am a lot of people, my brother.
they are basically gonna just say, you know what, that's 2 weeks from now. If it was maybe a month out or something, then maybe, because I'm clamoring for a Knives Out movie, because that both the first two were excellent. Maybe I'm gonna actually just like go out and go see it. But when you got that 2 week window,
Yeah,
and you already, that's the kind of thing where it's like, okay, we're like, yeah, I'll wait. I mean, I might go see it. Because at least here in Oahu, the movie theaters are surprisingly good. So, I'll probably go see it theatrically, but I definitely understand how there are a lot of people that might not. The one thing I really want to see theatrically is the uncut Kill Bill that's supposed to hit. Um,
yeah.
I got to find out what date. Is that it? Might be this weekend that they're re-releasing it theatrically, because that joint I've been waiting for 20 years, man.
That's gonna be great.
You
Yeah,
know, to see the whole uncut House of Blue Leaves sequence, to see some of the new animation. I mean, 4 hours. Like I'm there. I don't care that it's 4 hours. I mean, that's one of my favorite movies of all time.
yeah,
Just seeing it theatrically, waiting for I'm one of those people that thought that they never really should have split it into two movies, because when you read the whole script, because the thing about Quentin Tarantino with his scripts is, like, anytime a Tarantino script is available, it's one of the only times in Hollywood that you see everybody shut down to just read the script. On the page, he's that good. And I remember what it was like when I was able to get a copy of the Kill Bill script and actually read it as a whole, because it wasn't split into movie one, movie two. It was one movie, and reading it as one movie. it was just still one of my favorite script reading experiences ever. It just was it's an amazing read. And so to actually see it shot that way, or assembled that way, I think is going to be really, really interesting.
That's the kind of insider info you get here at Blerds in the Attic. That's quite the flex, reading the script of Kill Bill.
Well, I mean, well, back in the day it was. Now it's not. I mean, it's out there. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
like
Now you can throw up anything, but
a lot of the things, which is really kind of great because I remember how back in the day, like you literally, there was this spot in the village where you would have to because if even from your agency, if you were represented, certain scripts were hard to get, but there were spots in New York where they would just like leak the actual script, and if you went to the village, there were places you could go and they would kind of like sell them on the street, like literally like have a folding table with scripts piled up, and you can just buy them. And I still have some of those joints that I bought 20 years ago. But yeah, no, I think the thing is that that's one of the great things about this time of year is Deadline Hollywood. If you go usually around this time, because it's right around the time that people are starting to kind of get Oscar stuff or start their Oscar campaigns.
yeah.
Um, when they're trying to get nominated for best screenplay, a lot of them release the PDFs of the screenplays, and Deadline Hollywood collects them, so you can actually go to Deadline Hollywood and download the PDF of a lot of the films that are out. So one of the ones I'm waiting for, of course, is Sinners. I can't wait to actually read that script. Speaking of which, I mean, there was this whole thing. I mean, I know I have a love-hate relationship with Rolling Stone. I mean, I wouldn't call it love hate. I mean, I've written for them back in the day. Their television critic kind of eviscerated season 2 of Luke Cage, and I just had no qualms about kind of going at him about that. Although I think he's an excellent critic. I think on the film side, David Fear is also an excellent film critic. But this is not a spoiler. The December 1st list of the top 20 movies of 2025 came out with Rolling Stone, and this is one of the things that was interesting was there was a paragraph where it says these 20 titles aren't just the highlights of the last 12 months. They're the ones we'll likely be going back to year after year. From an epic tale of resistance to a personal reimagining of a gothic horror classic, welcome to the best movies of 2025. And Sinners is not on that list.
And how many movies are listed?
20 movies. And hey, I mean, Weapons, Frankenstein, the Phoenician Scheme, the Orwell doc, Eddington, Marty Supreme, which I don't even think that's theatrically available yet. We'll kind of take their word for it.
Oh, thank you, Jen. Producer Jen is pulling it up.
But I'm sorry, as much as I love Steven Soderbergh, I don't think the Black Bag is number 3. Hamnet. I mean, some of these movies, yes, I have to see them, but there is no way out of these 20 movies that Sinners should not be on this list.
Yeah, that makes me not take this list seriously. I do not have any type of previous relationship with Rolling Stone other than having read it a lot in my youth. I know you've written for them before. My sister Bianca's written for them before. I have not. Rolling Stone for me has always been a place where I wanted to go for that great profile on whoever the hot musician is right now. Obviously, in an internet age, this is the type of content that all legacy publications need to produce to stay relevant online. But Rolling Stone is not a place where I typically go for opinions like this, if you will. This article is doing exactly what it was designed to do, which is engage online, which is where you and I both came across it. So on that, talking about it that way, it's done what it's supposed to do. I myself would not go to Rolling Stone to figure out, okay, what are the top movies of 2025. But the fact that Sinners isn't on here is just mind-numbingly just not correct. When I think, because, okay, so number one on here, I believe, is One Battle After Another, a movie I've seen, a movie that I think is deserving of the hype that, was thrown upon it when it first came out. Some really great performances in that movie. But I think whatever first of all, I don't think if you compare the buzz of Sinners, and I know buzz isn't the same thing as whether or not a movie is good or not, but just comparing the buzz, the cultural phenomenon that it was, I don't understand why Sinners is not at least one of these 20 movies.
Well, I mean, it's not just that. I mean, I really think that One Battle After Another and Sinners should be, those are my two favorite. Or I really think one, two, and three should be One Battle After Another, Sinners. I would give Sinners the slight edge over One Battle After Another. I basically my top three would be Sinners, One Battle After Another, and then F1. I mean, if we're just talking about what it felt like to the thrill of cinema, the thrill of actual, you know, big filmmaking and using the format to the extremes with which you can push, the format. And even when you talk about F1, I mean, it's like as much as I like F1, it's like it was just basically a version of Top Gun Maverick on wheels because Top Gun Maverick is still probably one of my favorite cinematic experiences of the last 5 years. But the thing is that for me, and this is kind of, I hate having to justify this like this. I think that people think that because, you know, I'm black and because yes, absolutely advocate for black culture and have, I mean, hey, Blerds in the Attic. I mean, the fact that we call ourselves Blerds, not just nerds, the fact that honestly, um, I almost consider my previous job years ago as a music critic for the LA Times, also writing for Vibe, The Source, so many different music publications, writing for Premiere. I always kind of consider myself a translator of Black culture to a wide audience. And even as as a screenwriter and as a television writer, yes, the opportunities that I've had have largely been with African American culture. And I'm a deep advocate of African American culture. You know, fans of Luke Cage, even though people are still pissed at me for killing off Cottonmouth, don't front on the music and how it all kind of comes together. I get hit left and right with certain things, but with that element of always trying to elevate, you know, what we come from is one thing. But trust me, I am a harsh critic. And like hell, I mean, like even going back, well, I'm not as, I mean, I wish I was as scathingly brilliant as Angelica J. Bastian. Like, I mean, because her reviews of Luke Cage were so scathing, but they were so brilliantly written. I was like, damn, that's terrible. But like, it's so well written. Like, I couldn't front. Like, she's kind of like my Pauline Kael, where it's just like, it's just the level of discourse is just incredible, and still one of my favorite critics. Um, my thing about Sinners and why I love it as a movie, and it's a movie that I've watched over and over again. I don't love it because I'm black. I love it as a fan of cinema. I love it for, just not only just in terms of the acting and this musical composition and how it all seamlessly comes together, but also just like literally, just the shots. Like seeing Ryan Coogler keep up with John Ford and just like, these wide shots, and it's just like there's so much about when you see it what's shot for IMAX, and how it elevated. I mean, I'm not saying that IMAX movies, because they upcharge, like were in trouble, but most movies that got thrown into IMAX is basically just like almost like a popularity of superhero movies. Like, okay, let's put it out in IMAX, not because you needed to see it in IMAX,
Yeah.
but that kind of you can't almost, it's almost like a public service announcement when he basically went out and explained IMAX to the layman about this is why I've shot with these cameras in these formats, and these are the places where you can see this movie 70 millimeter as it was intended. And he did it with such passion without being pretentious about those kinds of things. It got people not only to put asses in seats. The IMAX experience with Sinners was so, you know, I don't want to say comprehensive. It was so just vital that they could have kept it in theaters throughout the summer, past the spring throughout the summer, and it still would have made even more money than it did. You know what I'm saying? And so the thing for me for it to be left off this list, I just think it's short sighted. I mean, it always happens. I mean, it's not just true of just black movies, but any critically acclaimed movie that gets released in the spring usually has a hard time being remembered by the time Oscars come around. And so hopefully this oversight, because when they keep talking about it, I keep going back to, the last paragraph of what was said, where David Fear said, these are the movies that will likely be going back to year after year. I saw Sinners in movie theater 4 times, and I've seen it at least three, at home. And like none of the other movies I've really revisited as many times that I've listed. And it's just like, for at the very least, for it not to be acknowledged to me. And I really think if I was going to be ordering my top three, I mean, I would probably, it's really kind of neck and neck for me with Sinners versus One Battle After Another. I think that they're probably going to have one of those Moonlight versus La La Land kind of battles.
Yeah.
When it comes to Best Picture. But my personal, I would put Sinners, One Battle After Another, and then probably my third, just in terms of pure cinematic experience, would be F1. But that's the thing. It's like, I understand as a critic, yes, you want to turn people on to movies that might not have gotten a chance at the box office. But it's almost like, I almost feel like Sinners is being penalized for being such a successful movie. And it's like they always kind of change. It just always seems like the okie doke when it comes to black films. It's like if you have a great movie but no one's seen it, then is it really that good? If you have a movie that becomes cultural phenomenon, well, yes, popular, but is it really good? It's like you can't win, and I really hope that that's not the case this year at the Oscars.
So I would go Sinners 1, F1 2 in terms of my top two. I did see One Battle After Another. I did like it. I didn't leave the theater thinking, oh my God, this is the greatest thing I've seen this year. But I did like it a lot. A lot of great performances. But I distinctly remember both times seeing. Now, when I saw Sinners the first time, it was at a press screening. And when I saw One Battle After Another, it was just a regular, civilian screening or whatever you want to call it. When I saw Sinners for the first time, there was a girl in line at the concession stand who had already seen it. And when she found out I had not seen it, she was envious that I was going to have the perspective of seeing it for the first time. She literally said, I wish I could see this for the first time again because of how it made me feel. And I don't think One Battle After Another, as great as it is the type of movie that can elicit that type of response.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, and I'll be the Sinners devil's advocate, so be it, for this pun. That chase sequence on the hills is gonna be one of those, when they say best sequences of the decade, that's gonna be up there. Like that was the thing for me, which is why it's going to be neck and neck for best director, best picture. Is like, the moment in Sinners, that one take where it takes you through the entire era of the diaspora of black music, and that hill sequence in One Battle After Another. Those are two of the best sequences, cinematic sequences, in years.
Yeah.
And they're gonna battle it out. I think sometimes where you kind of see unconscious bias is that critics will talk about Paul Thomas Anderson's skill. And mind you, okay, when you directed Boogie Nights and you've also directed Magnolia, you're going to get that extra push. But it's almost like they don't necessarily give the same level of intellectual oomph to Ryan Coogler's accomplishments. And I'm not going to necessarily call it a racial bias, because I'm not going to paint critics with that kind of swath. I feel like in some ways that's unfair. But what I will say is that just in terms of what people are quote unquote comfortable with, they don't necessarily think that they are showing bias when, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. Like, okay, we all know that the quarterback position, you really have to be smart to be a quarterback. And when it's a white pocket quarterback, people will say, "Oh, well, the
Cerebral.
intelligence of so and so."
Yeah.
Whereas, when you leave the pocket a little bit, oh, the athleticism of
Athleticism.
of, of,
Yeah.
of, of said quarterback. And I feel like those same kind of tropes, even though to be a director of any ilk, male or female, you got to have it going on upstairs. I really feel like some of those same kinds of tropes are the subtext underneath how people view and criticize, whether or not one is truly an auteur, you know?
You know, when I think of Sinners, I just think about how well the mid-credit scene, post-credit scene, whatever you want to call it, was executed. I love that Ryan took a little bit of his MCU experience and said, I'm going to sprinkle that onto this universe that I'm creating. I love that you could just feel the influence of it. And to me, it was a really impactful scene. And it was really the one scene more than anything. You know, there's something really, I'm all about, you know, time, not time travel per se, but it's a very beautiful moment that two characters that one was middle aged and one was a young boy, and then because they're a vampire now, they're the same age, and that young boy is now a very, very old man. It was a very emotionally well put together scene. It had all the impact of an MCU post credit scene. uh, Knocked me off my feet when I saw it. I thought Haley Steinfeld really, uh, without saying much at all, just her mannerisms and how she was finally able to embrace something that she had to hide back in the day in terms of her blackness, the character's blackness, that is.
Mhm.
I just thought that, like, that is still printed on my brain from the first time I saw it. For me, more so than anything, I saw in one battle after another. There's a whole lot of uh, there's a whole lot of stuff in one battle after another that is as great a movie as it is. As a biracial person, I don't want to say I'm rolling my eyes at it because I'm a biracial person, but I don't have a white parent. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, oh, this is the biracial. There's certain stuff that I just can't relate to or get into or say whether this is being fetishized or not or this and that. But just for me, when I think of those two, and if I'm ranking them, and I would definitely, one battle after another would absolutely be in my top five. But Sinners is number one for me, in part because of how they stuck the landing of that ending.
Yeah, yeah, no. I mean, but that's the thing is I think to be fair, I want to see more of these movies on this list. I mean, because hell, I'm old enough to remember when everybody was talking critically about Shawshank Redemption, but it had no box office.
Yep.
And then seeing it, then you're like, oh, like what I'm saying. So to be fair to David Fear, like, I think part of this list, it's not just clickbait. I think part of it is to encourage people to watch a lot of movies that they might not see otherwise, like, the Guinea Fowl movie or Hamnet or some of these other movies. Hedda is probably another movie that should be on this list, that I thought was excellent. But the thing is that I think that sometimes commercial movies or movies that do well, they're almost penalized for being popular. But these lists are hard. I mean, but these lists are like we're doing precisely what they want us to do, which is to
Which
argue
is
about
talking
this.
about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't really feel like it was him baiting, but I do feel like, yes, mission accomplished. We've been talking about this for 25 minutes, and it's going to be interesting to see other lists and see, what happens, and then nominations. And then it was like perfect example. Hey, earlier today, I was watching Malcolm X, and the fact that Denzel did not win Best Actor, really, when you watch a movie 30 years later and he's still
Yeah.
like, come on, man. I mean, it's the same thing for Pacino not winning for Godfather 1 or 2. And this does not to say anything against Sin of a Woman, but that was not the definitive, Pacino performance.
No,
y-
it
you
was.
know,
It was.
so yeah, I don't know.
So you know what? One, when you mentioned Malcolm X, the first thing I thought about. Remember, because if you watch this podcast, I'm big in the caps. I don't wear baseball caps every podcast, but 9 times out of 10, I'm probably gonna be wearing a fitted cap. Remember the Malcolm X caps when they
Yeah,
came out back, and those things were so hot and hard to find. I mean, this is like what 92, like 91, 92, something like that.
yeah, yeah,
But whenever I think of Malcolm X, the first a lot. I mean, a lot of it's a long movie, long Spike Lee joint. But I always think about that scene with the glove where he goes like that.
yeah,
Obviously, if you're listening to the podcast, you can't see what I just did, but there's a scene where there's a whole contingent of folks outside, and Denzel as Malcolm is coordinating them just with the movement of a hand with
yeah.
military like precision.
Yeah,
And
he puts his hand up full hand, turns it into a gun, and then goes like this. And then when he puts his hand up, everyone standing there, is basically at attention. Then when he turns his hand and does that, then everyone turns, and then Peter Boyle has that, really the probably one of the most memorable lines in the movie, which is, that's too much power for one man to have.
And I remember Spike saying, I knew you were going to bring up that line. And if you didn't bring it up, I was going to bring it up. But I could have sworn I heard Spike say somewhere that he wishes he would have gone back and written it as that's too much power for a black man to have. Did you
Yeah,
ever hear that?
but the subtext of it was still there because one of the tricks of screenwriting that my uncle Richard Wesley taught me is that um, although that was kind of the theme of the movie, one of the key things that you should do towards the basically the act two emotional climax is you have to put the the theme of the movie in a line of dialogue in the mouth of your main character, and that's ultimately you know how you enter Act Three. Hurricane, hate put me in prison, love's gonna bust me out. The Wild Bunch, it's not your word, it's who you give it to. Although I think that was Ernest Borgnine's line, and it really was William Holden's movie, so that might be a violation of that rule, but still kind of in the same spirit. But for me, for Malcolm X, that line, which was the pivotal line, which is we have the greatest organization the black man has ever seen. Niggas ruined it. Like that line stays 30 years later. Like anytime I see any kind of disharmony, that to me summarizes hip hop and some of these battles that have happened, and the ripple effects of people who to this day should be alive but got killed over some bullshit. It's really kind of a comment on so many things, and of course some of those same issues in terms of outside forces and inside forces pulling people apart happen. Don't even get into the Cointreau at all, but a lot of the things that happened in the civil rights movement, the way that it's kind of been revisited with certain things that have happened in the hip hop, it's that line just, oh my god, you know it resonates.
So we've had some wild transitions here on Blerds in the Attic, but there won't be a transition as wild as breaking down the best dialogue in Malcolm X to the very first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
That's a little
Uh,
too wild, man. but it shows why we're blurs, man.
so before we go any further, I have to shout out the fact that this movie is finally getting the 4K treatment. If you guys haven't been able to tell by following along on our podcast, Cheo and I are big advocates of watching movies in the highest quality possible. And if you're lucky enough to have a 4K TV or 4K DVD player, UHD, they're worth their weight in gold. And
What? Oh wait, and so just to make it clear, this is the original TMNT
the
movie.
original, so the early '90s, with no non CGI, just guys in puppet suits. I mean, they're in heavy suits, and the puppeteers are moving the mouse and all that stuff. That one.
So you're gonna make a transition from Malcolm X to Vanilla Ice? Come on, man.
I said the first movie. Now, granted, this 4K collection has all three,
Okay.
But I
Oh wait. So when Vanilla Ice was that the second movie?
that was two. That was Secret of the Ooze. They very wisely didn't put him in the first one,
Man, that's
which is just
crazy.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
And I don't. So funny
Well,
thing
see,
about
here's the thing, and this showing our age difference. Like, I was too old to. I mean, this is my whole thing. Of course, I collected the Eastman and Laird original comics, and I
right.
still have a couple of those. And the tone of those comics was like truly like adult graphic novels,
Oh yeah,
violent,
yeah.
like hardcore, not
Because they were basing it off of Frank Miller's Daredevil. So
right. It was not for kids. I mean, Splinter instead of Stick and all that stuff. And that's why I was never a fan of the cartoons
because they
and
weren't like
of
the comics at all.
yeah, but because they weren't anything like the comics. Because Raphael to me was one of the most subversive, darkest characters this side of Wolverine. Like, I mean, I used to love reading the comics, and then the fact that that wasn't reflected in terms of the popular culture or the movies, I never really got into. And it's funny because it's like the same way that you remember the Vanilla Ice song in Secrets of the Ooze. That's
Hey,
like
you
me,
brought it up.
like
You brought it up first.
well, I did, but it's also like that's like me remembering, Breaking Two, Electric Boogaloo. You know what I'm saying? It's just like it's one of those things that if you were a kid, you saw it and you had to be there, but anybody else as an adult be like, what?
You know what's wild is that kind of shines a light on our slight age difference in that your introduction to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was the very cool Eastman and Laird comic books that were black and white, that were very dark and gritty, and very much influenced by Frank Miller's Daredevil. My introduction was the cartoon, which was very lighthearted, very much aimed at kids, very much aimed at selling toys, which they sold $1 zillion worth of toys. And that's why when the movie came out, I was so excited because, at this point, when the cartoon comes out, I'm like 8, 9 years old. By the time the movie comes out, I'm 10. And so it wasn't that much of a transition from the very cartoony world that they created with the
Mhm.
animated series. As a kid, I didn't even know that it was originally a comic book until I was a little bit older.
Yeah.
And, learning who Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird are, and figuring all that stuff. I actually interviewed one of them for the last run, and they're working on a new movie now. They were supposed to be doing. Did you ever check out The Last Ronin?
Yeah, yeah.
So Last Ronin is wild. The concept is, one of the original creators comes back. It's a story they had planned way back in the day, never got to. Basically involves all the turtles are dead, but one. You have to try and figure out which turtle it is. They were actually going to make a R-rated live action version of that, but they've reportedly put that to the side to make yet another kind of PG-13 movie, which they've done the last couple of iterations of the Turtles. But I bring up the 4K thing to say it's just funny seeing, you're clearly were brought up on the comics. I clearly came up first with the cartoon. Also, I was pretty young, 8, 9 years old back when that was going on. But I love that first movie. 2 and
Yeah.
3, I don't really like. I didn't like the one. They replaced April O'Neil eventually. I didn't like that. But because 2 is Secret of the Ooze. 3, I think there was a fourth one too. Like once you get to 3, it's like time travel or something like that. They got real corny the bigger they got. But that
Well, I
first
mean, see, but I would argue that they started off corny,
one, see,
but
but
there we
the
go.
first one had a little bit of New York grit to it. Raphael had a little bit of an attitude in his trench coat, walking around in his New York accent. It was enough for me. So I say that to say, I am very excited that this is a movie that is heavily quoted in my house. We have pizza every Friday, and my kids will just randomly say, "Pizza dude's got 30 seconds." That's something we say a lot in my house. If my kids have learned one thing from me, it's probably the only thing they've learned from me, is quotes from Ninja Turtle movies. My wife taught them an entirely different language, and I taught them Ninja Turtle quotes. So
Yeah.
there we
Well,
go.
everybody in my household, like they know, like the best way to bait me is to say anything bad about the Godfather movies, because like I quote the Godfather endlessly. We used to in the Luke Cage writers' room. We actually had, instead of a square jar, we basically had a jar where we had to put $1 in anytime I made a reference to the Godfather. which by the end of season 2, like, that joint got pretty full,
But isn't it
Um,
great that we all have our influences? I mean,
yeah.
Ninja Turtles was influenced by Daredevil. Um, when you were making Luke Cage, what were the things that influenced you that found its way in there?
Oh, plenty. Like, I mean, so um, the entire color scheme was really influenced by Love Jones. Like, Theodore Witcher, I don't think gets enough credit as a auteur. Which is it's one of those things where when you only have one movie that's really popular, like I would say Theodore Witcher for Love Jones, Hype Williams for Belly. You can go all the way back to, Nothing But a Man or certain movies that like should have afforded the writer director auteur status, but because of the time and era, didn't necessarily do that. Um, that was a huge influence. I basically what did I pitch in the room? What I pitched in the room, um, I said I wanted Luke Cage to basically be the combination of Belly and Love Jones. No, Belly and City of God, as written by the staff of The Wire, is how I pitched it. And
It's a hell of a pitch.
strange, and strangely enough, I mean, what Jeff Loeb responded to was Belly because
Jeff
he
Loeb has seen Belly.
he was friends with Hype Williams and they had worked on something together, which I was like, crazily enough, that's what pushed me over the edge.
I didn't have that on my bingo card.
Was that he was kind of shocked that I referenced Belly, and that was one of the things. Um, that was an influence. A lot of people think that the club scenes in Luke Cage, people were like, "Oh, well, that's you trying to be like New York Undercover," but my actual influence was the Cotton Club, the Francis Ford Coppola, the other Francis Ford Coppola, Mario Puzo collaboration that doesn't necessarily get enough light as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, the Cotton Club was also a huge influence, just in terms of that. Like a lot of Westerns, Unforgiven, was an influence. Um, the Unforgiven is an influence because you have a reluctant hero who doesn't come out of his bag until a close confidant gets killed. So if you haven't seen Luke Cage, when Pop's death is kind of the catalyst for Luke to come out of the shadows.
Yeah.
And ironically, that was the thing was that initially episodes 1 and 2 of Luke Cage, that was the first episode. So people that got mad that I killed Pop in episode 2, I initially was going to kill him in episode 1. And so what happened was I had initially had episode 1 and 2 were one episode, and then episode 3, where of course he goes to Christmas Attic, that was going to be the second episode.
Yeah.
So for all those people that said, "Oh, well, the pacing of Luke Cage was too slow," well, blame Marvel because because I tried to speed things up. But
Mm.
ultimately, I really do think they were right because slowing things down and splitting my initial concept of episode 1 and 2 of 1 and 2, actually worked, I think. And then Matt Owen's third episode, really kind of kicked things off. And then, of course, Charles Murray's fourth episode, which was the origin, what was another kind of great way to go. So there's all different types of things. And that was the other thing was I had such an incredible writing staff was that we all bought our own influences. I used to call the writer's room the danger room because like the X-Men, and my analogy, I was always Charles Xavier because not just being the mastermind or the telepath, but you have to understand how everybody is going to combine their stories and their special powers in different ways. So for example, like the same way that you know, Wolverine and Colossus would combine for the fastball special. Like, Akela Cooper, Aida Kroll, Matt Owens, Nathan Jackson, like, Charles, like, Jason Horwich, like we all Christian, we all had these different pitches and these different ways of like bringing our separate and passions like to the show, and that was one of the great things was just watching how they all kind of like came together to push the story in all these different directions.
Well, I just want to clarify that it was not my intention to transition from Malcolm X to Vanilla Ice. I would never do such a thing on a podcast called Blerds in the Attic. I was referring to the very first Ninja Turtles movie, which I always hold near and dear to my heart. The other two can kick rocks. But I guess I'll have to get them if I get that set because it's a collected set.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, but then again, I mean, Suge Knight, who definitely kind of has that West Indian Archie kind of vibe, and in terms of like how little gangsterism will get you farther than just a kind word when it comes to the business of hip hop or cinema.
so you and I had been having a convo recently about James Bond, which to me feels it kind of feels like it's in a dormant state right now. So currently Amazon is the holder of like whatever's going to happen with James Bond is going to take place at Amazon, right?
Hmm.
So we were kind of talking about who we think could potentially make the best Bond. You had actually sent me a not a list, but it was like all these photos of all these potential folks. This is a big deal to me. So we were just talking about the whole Netflix thing about their
Hmm.
lack of lack of necessity when it comes to theatrical and things. So I am not up to speed on what's going on here with whenever James Bond returns. Is it just going to be something that streams on Prime, or do you
No,
think it'll
well,
be
no, I mean they can't not put out a theatrical James Bond. I think the fan base would like literally like picket. They would go to both Seattle and to Culver City and and basically go ham if that happened, because you see already how when Amazon tried that really okay, you can't necessarily call it benign, but the same way how remember how when they tried to do an edit of ET where they tried to replace the it was even primitive at the time. They replaced the guns of the agents rushing the house with flashlights or something like that,
yeah, that
or of course the most famous moment of all is we all know that Han shot Greedo in cold blood. Greedo did not shoot first. I don't care. Come on, But that's the kind of thing. So that when they actually tried to cover the illustrations of Bond with the gun, which is so signature by removing the gun, the fan base just went crazy. They're
they
like,
they did. They really the response was wow.
yeah. I mean, because here's the thing: it's like Bond is an asshole. He's a dinosaur. That's the point of the character. A newer, kinder, gentler Bond. You know, you have to earn getting him there, and that was really the great thing about what Daniel Craig did with the character, which is that it took a number of movies for him finally to get there. Although I still disagree with killing Bond in that last one.
Yeah, I
I
hated. I hated
it
that.
it
Hated.
kind of puts them into like a corner. So of course, what they have to do now is they're thinking they have to reboot Bond and do that whole thing.
Now,
To me,
Craig was not young when he started. Not that, he wasn't old when he started, but he wasn't young either. This is
but
Amazon. They've got the money. Do you think they're going to go younger and cheaper?
they shouldn't though. I mean, because boyish Bond, like
I don't want to see that.
nobody wants to see that. The whole point about Bond is that he's got a little grit to him. He's made mistakes. You don't want. I mean, even though Bond is clean shaven, you don't want a Bond who can't grow facial hair. Do
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It's like there has to be a certain level of edge to Bond in order to make him Bond. Because here's the thing: now that we've seen Ethan Hunt in the whole Mission Impossible thing. We know that it's possible to launch new franchises when it comes to spies, and that if they're well written, because especially the Chris McQuarrie, Tom Cruise, like Mission Impossible is always great, but then once Tom Cruise and McQuarrie took they elevated the thing to a whole nother level. Like it's possible to do stuff without Bond. I mean, like Bond level stuff without Bond, but but when you have Bond, let Bond be Bond, my whole thing. And the thing is interesting is like Pierce Brosnan, old as he is, he still has a certain swagger to him. I would love to see old man Bond. I
I
think
would.
that would be kind of interesting, you know. And I think that's what sometimes people hate is the fact that like this is not just true of the Bond franchise. Like when you think about what they could have done with the Star Wars sequels, people wanted to spend more time with uh,
With the OGs.
with Mark Hamill as Luke, with Han Solo as with I'm sorry, with Harrison Ford as Han Solo. Everybody wanted to see more of that. They really wanted to have more of a chance to say goodbye to these beloved characters rather than killing them off in subsequent movies.
Yeah,
Like, and this is not to take anything away from John Boyega or from anybody because I think that like I really wish they gave John more to do because I would have loved to seen him really be a Jedi, they of course in the third movie they finally alluded to the fact that he had force powers or force like tendencies,
that
but
was a cop out to me.
why not let him go all the way? You know what I'm saying? It's like hell, I'm still mad at them killing off Mace Windu, but that that's besides the point.
Mace
But the
got
thing
me.
is that when it comes to Bond, like I really think that they have the opportunity, young and old. I think really the only requirement for Bond is that he be British.
Well,
Uh,
that was going to be my next question. Do you think, as much as fans flipped out when they tried to censor Bond a little bit, covering up this, covering up that, do you think there'd be a similar outrage if they cast an American?
no, there would be a similar outrage if they cast a black Brit. Although I certainly think that Damson Idris would make a great Bond. My favorite Idris Elba for Bond would be great. John Boyega would be great as Bond.
I
You know
think
what I'm saying?
Idris to me is that perfect age for what I want to
Yeah,
see in a
yeah.
Bond, more so than Damson and more so than Boyega.
Although I think the only requirement for Bond is particularly now that Daniel Craig broke the first level of rules. There was a whole thing, believe it or not, where they said blonde. I mean, yeah, Bond couldn't be blonde. Remember
Yeah,
that?
I do remember
You
that.
know, he was the first person to break that rule, and then the whole thing that he brought to it was that even though Bond is kind of this genteel, quote unquote, posh character, they brought us kind of a sense of there's a rogue there, and so I think that if you came with that, with whether it's Idris, whether it's Damson, whether it's John Boyega, I think you get that. But then again, I think also Matthew Good could be really interesting as Bond. I think even the person that I think Colin Turner right now is who they're saying is like the in the lead, and I think he would be a good choice. Um, but I think this whole reboot thing. I don't know. My whole thing about Bond is that if you're gonna reboot it, you still have to tie it to the old mythology to a certain extent. And I think the way that you do that is that you reveal the fact that Bond is a title. That not is not necessarily the name of the person. Is that once you become '07, your new code name will be James Bond. You
I like
know,
that.
like I mean, and yes, okay, they'll say in the last movie, the actress was the next '07, so that might invalidate that. But my whole thing would be like, if you really did kill Bond in the last movie, then in honor of that Bond, anybody almost like a in honor of Bond, then you take his name as once you become 007 in honor of the Bond of that Bond who did the Daniel Craig universe Bond because of the legendary things he did. Everybody after that would now have the name James Bond, and that would allow you to cast almost anybody having be Bond, and you get that. But it also allows you also to have people like the Pierce Brosnans of the world or the Timothy Daltons who have become so good at playing villains to have them come back as Bond villains, which also could be really another interesting way to kind of go at it. You know?
So Daniel Craig is my favorite Bond by a lot. I do remember the Pierce Bronson movies. My late grandmother Anna, her favorite was Sean Connery.
Yeah.
And I do like some of the Connery films from back in the day. Obviously, Daniel Craig's Bond represented a shift in how they made the movies, whereas Pierce Bronson's movies like the ones he made with Holly Berry and all the others back in the day, they were kind of wink wink in terms of the humor, in terms of not being as dark and serious, in terms of the even the stakes. Uh, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I always remember hearing about the Austin Powers movies having an impact on how the James Bond franchise moved forward, because he had turned being a British spy into this big kind of joke, and
Hmm.
they wanted it to have a more serious tone. Um, I
Well,
think,
I mean, but some of that goes back to Roger Moore, you know, because you know you had you always had Connery, who was kind of roguish and then kind of had tongue in cheek. You had the one Lazenby movie, which of course James Bond gets married and becomes a widow, but before the end of the movie, and is like not necessarily as well regarded as some of the Bond movies, but it definitely has fans. Then Roger Moore kicks things off with Live and Let Die, and that one was a lot grittier. But then as Roger Moore kind of stayed with the character, it got campier and campier as we got into the '80s. Then you get Timothy Dalton, who basically still had a little bit of camp, but kind of took it more to edgy direction. Then you had Pierce Brosnan, who finally kind of had the perfect mix of what we thought was kind of humor and grit, but definitely not taking it as a joke like Roger Moore. But then, by the time you get to Daniel Craig, they really were able to get away with a lot more things, just in terms of the grit of the character, but still have kind of a dark humor to it. And so, when you talk about what the Broccoli's did in terms of and then we're not even talking about when Connery came back to the role in the kind of unofficial spinoff, Let Never Say Never Again. There's always kind of been a certain continuity of character and quality, up and down, but never like okay, like although some people might argue that Moonraker or certain other movies, pussy, like don't even deserve to be talked about, but there's always been a certain level of quality when it comes to Bond. And I think what's the bigger story is not just the fact that they're going to recast Bond. It's now that you don't have the Broccoli's involved.
yeah,
Um,
that's a big part of it too.
that's kind of it's just kind of the same thing. How Perfect Example is like at some point there's going to be a Marvel universe that does not have Kevin Feige's involvement, the same way that there was a Star Wars that doesn't have George Lucas involved.
Yeah,
And people will argue that the quality has suffered.
were they forced out? Is that why they're not being a part of this now? Is that they couldn't see eye to eye with Amazon? What was that?
I mean, I don't. I mean, I only know what I've read. I don't have any inside knowledge of what was going on. But ultimately, you know, they decided to, sell the franchise. I think for a Billy.
Wow.
It was for a lot of money. It was enough generational money to say, you know what, y'all so
Y'all
badly
figure it out.
want to do what you want to do, then y'all can do it. And I don't necessarily blame them because it was a family business, and and when you look at what those movies were being made for and how and in terms of producer's share, even though I'm not saying that they ever got jerked, but when you look at investment return after a certain point, it makes sense. I mean, it happens in sports all the time.
Yeah,
Where like perfect example, it happening with the Lakers right now, where the Bus family, with all their ups and downs and dysfunction, eventually sold the Lakers to what's his name for a few
Tim.
yeah, for a lot of money,
Yeah,
for generational wealth. And so I don't blame the Broccoli's for walking away for that kind of money. But then at the same time, as a fan, you hope that you know who they're bringing in has real passion for Bond. Um, because yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I mean, um, the last movies have been so well directed, um,
yeah,
and I mean, they have one of the best directors in the world. In terms of Denny, being the new director. So being a huge fan of his, I'm definitely going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But at the same time, it could be interesting, both in a good and bad way. Hopefully in a good way, because as much as I love the character, and the storytelling, hopefully that will continue.
So they're following up, you know, for me, pound for pound. I know every generation has their Bond. I think Daniel Craig's the best. He made 5 movies: Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, Spectre, and No Time to Die, in which he did die at the end. Spoiler alert, sorry, which I did not agree with.
Well, yeah,
Um,
well, see, no time to die, no time to spoil that, man.
right, right. So now,
But hey,
granted,
well,
I get the fact that by the 5th movie, he was probably ready to move on. But I think you can move on without killing the character, which to me, I guess, kind of makes it a reset, if you will. So whoever
mhm,
this new Bond is going to be, it's not going to be a continuation, obviously, of the Bond that just died. But for me, it's always been the case that Casino Royale is and always will be my jam. The chemistry that Daniel Craig and Ava Green had in that movie, and the believability. Like, granted, I was a lot younger when I saw it, but
mhm,
at the end, I was like, you know what? I'd give up being James Bond for Ava Green too, and I actually believed that he
mhm,
was going to do that at the end, and it's just such. It was such a betrayal
mhm,
when he figured out what she was really about and what her motives were, and you can just feel the coldness and the playboy being born
mhm.
in that very, like you just know that man is never going to love again. And I thought it was just so well executed.
I mean, just the continuity of villains and ultimately building out Spectre. Which then, ultimately, even though Christoph Waltz, really played an interesting Blofeld, but then with that cuckoo thing, that got a little weird. But the rest of it was definitely interesting, intricate plotting in a really cool way. My favorite of all of them is Skyfall. Skyfall to me is just like damn near the perfect Bond movie, you know. And the thing is that Sam Mendes, as a director, Martin Campbell and Sam Mendes both directed the hell out of those movies, in terms of their perspective. And strangely enough, Sam Mendes stayed on for what was it, 3 movies?
Yeah, he was around for a
You
while.
know, like I mean, and that's the thing. It's like as I sometimes tell people, it's like you can't, you never know what someone's going to do as a director until they do it. Because if you had told me that the director of American Beauty was going to be one of the best Bond directors, I think sometimes people, they give too much weight to what people have done before, without really understanding what a director does in terms of, not just camera placement, but also just understanding, the soul of a character, being able to elicit, the level of acting that one needs to kind of elevate a franchise. So, I just think it's interesting. It really makes you wonder, like, what other people have given the opportunity to direct a Bond movie, what they would have done. Because I think at one point Tarantino had a shot, but the Broccoli's, of course, didn't want to necessarily give over a certain level of control that he might have wanted. I mean, I think at one point Spielberg wanted to, direct a Bond movie. Where some people say, "Oh, why would you want Spielberg?" But then you see West Side Story, and it's like, come on, I thought there was nothing left to say, particularly after the original West Side Story, to revisit that. That to me just screamed of, like, classic consumerism. But then you see what he did. It was beautiful. Like, in some ways, that I don't think you can say it was superior to the original, but it it existed for a reason. It's still, you end up going back to it, in a lot of ways. So it's just really interesting. It'll be interesting to see what Denny does. Like,
Yeah, I'm of the mindset that when it comes to Bond, one, I think Craig's going to be a hard act to follow. I think that's the equivalent of, whoever eventually has to follow Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, or once Robert Downey Jr. finally hangs it up in the MCU. I think that's a tough act to follow. Um, I hope Idris. I don't know if Idris really has interest in it. You know, obviously I have no insider information. I don't really. I am obviously I am black, so if I do think it would be cool if James Bond was a black British guy. But
Yeah,
I
same
don't
here.
I don't get all like I realize that would be like this like dog whistle moment of people kind of being upset, but I'm also one of those people that thinks that the original James Bond author based it off of a real Dominican playboy. So I'm like, if a Dominican dude inspired James Bond, I don't care what race he is. Uh, but I think it's going to be, you know, I would like them to cast older. I've kind of had this kind of spider sense feeling that they're going to try and go a little younger to get, you know, some legs out of the franchise.
Yeah,
Seeing how tiring it was for Craig towards those last couple of films. But I can't wait. I love James Bond, and you know, the movie going experience always needs a James Bond.
100%. I mean, yeah, like I, some people get really mad about the possibility of expanding the franchise. Like, where they say, okay, well, now that Amazon's going to take it over, then there's going to be 008, 007, 006, 005, but like, I think it could be interesting if you have to have this young direction to basically do a Hogwarts for spies as a television show. In the Double O universe could be really interesting to see how one becomes Double O. But then if you're going to do that, you build into what it takes to then go level up. And I think that there's a way to do it without ruining, the 007 franchise.
You know,
Um,
I
you
think
know,
it's funny because you know when you talk about the potential of a black Bond, Idris always comes up. Do you feel like I feel like it's always better when the role is so well known that the actor is not so well known. You know, for like as much as I love Channing as Gambit, like I don't see Gambit, I see Channing. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Well, I mean, it just depends. I mean, because like, um, I would agree with you if it wasn't for Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, because I've been reading Tony Iron Man comics for years. There's no way on God's green earth back in the day that I would have picked Robert Downey Jr. when Tom Cruise was available, and Tom Cruise at one point was going to play Iron Man. And when I first heard of Robert Downey Jr. being cast, I was puzzled at the time, because of course he's a brilliant actor, like because of Chaplin and just Less Than Zero, so you knew he had the chops. But after some of the things that he had been through, I mean, and you can Google all the different trials and tribulations. I mean, okay, all I got to say is that, anytime you're in prison and you get advice from Rick James on how to straighten your life up, you can go down that rabbit hole with Robert Downey Jr. There's no way that I thought that he was going to then put a multi-billion-dollar franchise on his back and at the same time now be the savior of said franchise.
Yeah,
But
he's
he did.
pulling double duty.
The one thing I've learned about casting is you never know what an actor is going to do until you have them read for a part. Not that all actors need to audition, but all actors have a way of making a part their own, and you at the very least sometimes need to give them the benefit of the doubt that they can do it, because they'll take things in ways that you've never seen them do before. Because there was nothing that Mahershala Ali had done before, even though I liked him in House of Cards, that prepared me for Cottonmouth. You know, I liked Theo Rossi on Sons of Anarchy, but I remember, Charles Murray saying, like, because when I was thinking about Shades, like, I always thought that Shades would have a kind of a different kind of demeanor, and I'd only seen him play what was essentially not a weak character, but a character that was not like, oh my God, you were scared of that character from Sons of Anarchy. And Charles Murray, who was on staff of, who was a director and also a EP on Sons of Anarchy, and worked, with him, said Theo is a great actor, and if you have the chance to get him for Shades, you should get him. And I'm 100% happy that I listened to him,
You need,
because he was incredible, because Theo was incredible as Shades. You
yeah.
know what I'm saying? And so it's also the same thing. It's just like when you have a great actor, grab the great actor, because a great actor can make you believe anything when given the opportunity to do it, and don't necessarily be swayed by whatever they've done before, because the truly great can make you forget what they've done before and then take whatever you have and take it to places that you've never seen before. I mean, Alfred Woodard, you know, because when you start writing for Mariah, like all of a sudden Alfred's staying and doing all types of shit. You're like, damn, you know, like this is not the nurturing character for Miss Everest Boys, you
I'll
know.
bet, I'll bet you can't guess who my favorite who my favorite casting and character on Luke Cage was.
Hmm. Frankie Faison's Pop.
Close, but no, it's actually Thomas Jones.
Yeah,
And
Thomas
you,
Q. Thomas did a great job. He really did.
and you know why? Because I'm a DC boy, always going to be District of Columbia till the end. But I was schooled in middle school, high school, and college in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And Thomas Jones is a Virginia football legend. And as the
Yeah,
grandson of a Virginia football legend who was also a running back, uh, you recognize big deals when you see him. And when he was at the University of Virginia, he was a big deal. And he was, I think, drafted in the top 10. I think he first went to the Cardinals. So it was just weird because I'm watching Luke Cage. I've always had there's always been two sides to me, the comic book fan and the sports guy. I got into
hmm
journalism originally because I wanted to be the next Stuart Scott. I wanted to be the next Michael Wilbon. And so there was a time where my sports knowledge, just because I watched it 24/7, that I knew every player, every college, whatever. So it was very wild watching Luke Cage with my comic book brain and my sports brain spider sense going off and saying, "Is that Thomas Jones?" Like,
yeah,
and
yeah,
and then so obviously that first time I saw him, I'm looking at the credits at the end, and I'm like, "Yo, that's Thomas Jones." I mean, he did such a great job, but it was just wild for me, being a sports fan, going to school in Virginia, knowing how big of a deal he was in the state of Virginia, and obviously he played in the pros and the NFL as well. That was wild.
yeah. No, I mean he did an incredible job on Luke Cage, and I was also, of course, a fan of his when he was playing for the Jets. But that's the thing, was that he definitely had the chops, and it was really just a question of opportunity. And he's been cast in a lot of things since, and I think really well cast, because he's a really good actor. Even the thing was just like everybody. I just having the opportunity to work with Simone Missick, having the opportunity to work with the man who is Luke Cage over my shoulder, Mike Coulter. I mean, like, what I love about writing that show is that I hear their voices in my head like all the time. And Luke Cage and Southland are like probably the two shows that if I got a phone call and say, yo, I need a new Southland or a new Luke Cage by Friday, I could just off the top of my head just write an episode, because you live with the actors in your head. And that was the thing about that show that was so fun, was that it wasn't just having the opportunity to write it, but knowing that Mike Coulter or Simone Missick or Theo Rossi or Alfred Woodard or Mahershala Ali, we're just going to take things to just different levels. And sometimes, like, you're watching them perform, and it's a scene that you've written, and then you forgot that you wrote it, because they just go places emotionally, like, that you just like damn. That's forever what that scene on the rooftop in episode 2 is going to be for me, because I remember it was raining, we were up on the roof, and they were just going through the dialogue, and they I got so into watching the scene, I was like, what's going to happen next? And they're like, what, you should know that, man, you wrote it. But like, when you see actors playing jazz on that level, it's just like, yeah. The barbershop scenes, which we shot simultaneously, because Paul McGagan, the director of episodes 1 and 2, who I actually not discovered, because of course he did the pilot for Scandal. I became a huge fan of his, even though of course the Scandal pilot was great. I became a huge fan of Paul McGagan's because of Sherlock. His directing on that. really was a huge influence on him doing Luke Cage. I mean, the influences come from everywhere, and he was able to guide everybody. And even though Mike Coulter originated Luke Cage with Jessica Jones in terms of his portrayal of the role, we were able to, make him and you know, build a world around him very specific to Luke Cage that was different than the Luke Cage that you saw in Jessica Jones, but they bolstered each other rather than negated what he did before. So I think as a continuation, it was a really incredible opportunity,
It's
and I'm just and like I always say, like really, if we're gonna tie Luke Cage and James Bond together in terms of our wild transitions, like I always say, I know that there's possibilities that they're going to want to recast Luke Cage and they're going to want to, bring it back, and I might not be involved. But like I say, is that I always feel as if I had the opportunity to work with the Sean Connery version of Luke Cage, and that work and the things that he did with the character are going to stand the test of time, as far as I'm concerned. Even though, I mean, of course, it's been it's been 10 years. I mean, people are going to want to do things differently. You understand it, but I still think that he's as indelible as Sean Connery or Daniel Craig to that role. But and that's a perfect example that there is the possibility that it will be recast, that you live with that, but you also live with the fact that you got to rock with Sean Connery, so to speak.
it's wild to me that the two most important black superhero live action adaptations ever. I mean, they're if you got to do the Mount Rushmore, it's Black Panther and it's Luke Cage. And I think it's wild that both of the leaders of those productions, Ryan Coogler with Black Panther and you with Luke Cage, both of you guys had to inherit the title leads. That's kind of wild to me.
Well, I mean, but it's just the thing that I always said is that if they knew how valuable Luke Cage was, they wouldn't have given it to me. And I was lucky that I knew what the opportunity was and that I was able to take it, given the opportunity as far as I could, and if given another opportunity, would take it even further. You know, I could only imagine if I was able to get another crack at Luke Cage with today's budgets. Oh my God, you really would be able to show off the full strength of the character. And yeah, he'd be lifting buses and throwing. Yeah, he'd be doing all the kind of Luke Cagean things that you see.
Mhm.
Like I don't want the Marvel snipers to come out, and get me by revealing quote unquote trade secrets. But if you knew the pattern budget of Luke Cage, man, it's probably the catering budget of House of the Dragon. is all. I mean, I'm being a little sarcastic with that, but
Right.
it was not compared to today's dollars a lot of money.
Hey man, stranger things are happens. You'll never know. But we have made it through yet another episode of Blerds in the Attic, our post Thanksgiving show. Got a couple more before the rest of the holidays 2025 get here.
Yeah,
Always a pleasure chatting with you, brother.
no,
Always.
man. It's just like I'm getting ready. It's like I got the Honolulu Marathon on the 14th. So this will be my third time running it. There's a possibility because I might not run it. Like right now, I put myself at 70-30.
You're training for
But
it, right?
yeah, I've been training for it. But like at the same time, it's just like and I've been training for it. I lost weight for it, but there's part of me that wants to get a little more time. Things with just the transition took a little more out of me than I thought. So there's part of me that's thinking like, okay, maybe I'll just wait, do the half marathon, which they call the Hapaloo out here, and then do it again, postpone. But it's just such a fun marathon. And the fact that there's no time limit on it, although I personally want to run it faster than I've run it before, which is
Mhm.
part of the reason for the weight loss. We'll see. I mean, I'll be 53, knock on whatever this is, on the 12th, and to be out there on the 14th, would be a great thing. So we'll
Hey
see.
man, Well, your boys got to hit the gym too. I had a little too much to eat during Thanksgiving, so gotta work on that a little bit. Get back in the pumping iron.
Yeah, and speaking of, as soon as we get off, I'm gonna go get on the treadmill, get my miles in.
Yeah, you can do that because it's not almost midnight where you are.
Yeah. So, well, on the tread I can run anytime, but
Oh, okay.
but the thing is now that like because I'm only 11 days out, or no 13 days out, transitioning more to the road work is I got to get up crack of dawn and get out there.
Yeah.
And it's just all I'm saying is that if you're gonna be doing marathons, do them in your 20s, man. Do them in your 30s when your knees aren't old like mine are. You know what I'm saying? Like because you definitely feel that bounce on the pavement.
Hey, well, just remember we're not here looking as young as we do just because we're black. We're putting in the work. So
Yeah,
let that be a lesson to the older brothers out there.
yeah. But yeah, black doesn't crack, complexion wise, but when it comes to knees, we're as old as anybody else.
Whole lot of popping going on.
No doubt, no diggity. Anyway, till next week, I'm Cheo Hodari Coker.
And I'm David Betancourt.
And together we are Blerds in the Attic. Again, man, December. Sagittarius represent. Here we go.
See y'all next time.
Peace.